From an ordinary detail on the road, we can see the difference between China and the United States. Today's topic, to be precise, should be the difference between China and the world, and the United States is only an important comparison parameter. But the inspiration for this topic came from chatting with American friends, so it makes sense to involve the United States. I often say that I traveled to 40 countries by self-driving, and went to 47 states in the United States. I was trapped in the country with a mask for 3 years. Looking back now, it was a blessing in disguise. Let's take a look at the changes in the country. I gradually realized that a brand new social organization model in human history is emerging. If you don't have a foreign travel experience as a reference, you may not be aware of this great change. In a nutshell, the biggest difference between China and the world lies in its organizational capabilities armed to the teeth. Many things, in the eyes of Chinese people, are commonplace, but in the eyes of foreigners, they are inconceivable. Sometimes, they even feel scary. Let me tell you slowly. The foreign cities I have driven to far exceed those in China. The reason is very simple. In foreign countries, especially in the United States, public transportation is very poor, and driving is the only option. In China, high-speed rail and subways extend in all directions, but driving is congested. In my eyes, the biggest difference between Chinese and foreign roads is the street trees. Ningbo Kinhe North Road. There is a very inconspicuous road in the urban area of Ningbo called Kinhe North Road. Many Ningbo people may not have heard of it. The turf is neat and the trees are towering, so that pedestrians can escape from the scorching sun in summer. Camphor trees are easy to breed diseases and insect pests. Every year after winter, garden workers have to brush a layer of lime slurry on the camphor trees to prevent the invasion of diseases and insect pests. The most interesting thing is that under each tree, there are herbaceous scallions planted. Every summer, the white petals and yellow stamens are very beautiful. In principle, there should not be an inch of bare soil. This is not an isolated case, but a common phenomenon in Ningbo. I have never seen any other country that invests as much in urban greening as China does. We have reached a point of refinement. When I was young, I often heard a myth called Singapore. Later, when I went to Singapore, I realized that people did not dig out the details to this extent. Many people may not believe that the level of maintenance and management of any street park in Ningbo exceeds that of Central Park in New York. The tall Central Park in American dramas actually has potholes on the grass, water everywhere, and garbage floating around. The large lawn in front of the White House in the United States looks tall from a distance. When you look closer, it is almost the same as a vegetable field. In 2019, I specially took a video of the White House lawn and sent it to Moments. Many people did not believe it. This is the legendary White House lawn. In New York, except for Central Park and Manhattan, almost all roads have no street trees. Some people may have said that New York was planned early, every inch of land was expensive, and no tree pit was reserved. In fact, in the well-planned capital of the United States, Washington, Independence Avenue connecting the Capitol and the Washington Monument, the greening is also very average, which is the core area of the entire United States. Overlooking Washington from the air, it is indeed full of greenery, but when you look closer, the management and maintenance are very rough. The greening in the United States basically fends for itself and no one manages it. But the United States has a good life, superior natural conditions, large land, few people, and not many industries, and the overall environment is still good. Downtown Washington Road. This is a typical Washington street. The overall greening is not bad, but there is a lack of management and planning. There are big trees and small trees. Weeds grow under the trees. And the affluent areas of Washington, D.C., such as McLean, are another scene. There are big houses hidden in the forest, and the lawns of every household are as flat as carpets, but those are maintained with private funds. Los Angeles roads. If you still feel that it is not enough to explain the problem, then let's go to the new towns in the west to see that there are not necessarily street trees there. If you have the conditions, you can open Google Street View and go to a random road in Los Angeles. Basically, a few trees are sparsely planted. Trees, without much planning, let alone post-management, are in a state of self-destruction, and a large number of tree pits are idle. Some people may think that the United States is the only one like this. According to my self-driving experience of tens of thousands of kilometers, the situation in Europe is similar to that in the United States. Even in Japan, street trees are not standard equipment on the road. Japan's National Highway number 1 has neither street trees nor a median. Seeing this, some people may say that it is because the overall greening rate in Western countries is high and there is no need to pay attention to street trees. Indeed, I thought so too, but after careful study of the data, I found that this may not be the case. The world's forest coverage, representative countries are as follows: Japan 64%, South Korea 61%, Norway 60%, Sweden 54%, Brazil 56%, Canada 44%, Germany 30%, the United States 30%, France 29%, China 24%, Egypt 0%. It seems that China's coverage rate is not high. In fact, the reason behind this is that the complexity of China's landforms has not been considered. In the West, we have large areas of deserts, plateaus, grasslands, and some provinces, such as Henan and Hebei. China, Jiangsu, etc. have a large area of cultivated land. In short, it is roughly estimated that more than 50% of the country's land area is not suitable for tree growth. If compared with similar landforms, China's forest coverage rate has long been world-class. Many people think that the Japanese are crowded and the land is small. In fact, Japan is not small, with an area of 378,000 square kilometers, even larger than Germany, and its population density is lower than that of the provinces in southeastern China. Even so, Japan's world's first forest coverage rate is only 64% only. In contrast, provinces with higher population density in China have the same mountainous landforms. The coverage rate of Fujian, 66.8%, has surpassed that of Japan. Jiangxi, 61.5%, Zhejiang, 59.43%, and Guangxi, 60.17%, can almost be on par with Japan, and Guangdong, 53.52%, and Hainan, 57.36%, are also more than most developed countries. In other words, within the reach of manpower, China's forest coverage is already world-class. In the past, Chinese people like to talk about high-speed rail and 5G, leading developed countries. In fact, those are all hardware. As long as the money is in place, it is relatively easy. The most difficult thing is environmental governance, which requires large investment and slow results, and requires decades of long-term planning. Unexpectedly, we actually did it. Now I see near my home, under the blue sky and white clouds, big trees cover the sky, and I even feel unreal. That is, just a few years ago, every household was still hoarding air purifiers, and now, they have long been forgotten by everyone back. Just over 20 years ago, I clearly remember that almost all the rivers were polluted, and there were not many trees on the mountains, and I often heard that people felled them illegally. Looking back at my hometown now, the mountain has been covered by forests, and there are often news of wild boars hurting people. It's only been a short period of 20 years, and I really don't know how it was done. Hangzhou elevated flowers. Recently, I discovered the new skills of China Malu, which refreshed my cognition again. And behind this new skill, there is also an unusual mysterious ability hidden. Because there are few opportunities to drive in domestic cities, my impression of domestic highways is still at least 10 years ago. For example, I used to think that in the whole world, only the elevated roads in Shanghai and Ningbo were planted with flowers. The original cold and ugly concrete forests became soft and beautiful because of the embellishment of flowers. When the flowers are in full bloom, it is a kind of enjoyment to drive on the elevated road. Some time ago, I drove to Hangzhou, only to find that Hangzhou is also like this, and the elevated road is full of roses. Later, I searched on the internet and entered the name of the city plus elevated plus flower city, and I could find many cities in the south, such as Chengdu, Wuhan,
那你就跟他说来吧，我一会儿
other southern
你就跟
cities
我把这
where flowers are grown on elevated, especially in Guangzhou
啊，
and
明天
Shenzhen,
什么时候
because they are close to the tropics. There is plenty of light and heat, and the flowers on the
？OK， 我
elevated
放到你那就行，对吧？
Some people may say,
Okay.
you are making
Okay,
too
bye-bye.
much of a fuss, planting flowers on the elevated, is it so exaggerated? Everyone knows that planting trees is easy, but growing flowers is difficult, especially potted flowers, which are even more difficult. Because the soil layer is shallow, it is not easy to water regularly. I dare say that looking at the whole world, maybe China can do it. In order to realize the elevated sea of flowers, two core competencies must be possessed. Industrial capacity. Some people may wonder why the elevated flower planting involves industrial capacity. Yes, flowers and plants seem to belong to agriculture and forestry, but in essence they are industries. We have a neighbor in the north, Mongolia, which has a large land, few people, and many cattle and sheep. In the early days of the last mask, the president of Mongolia personally drove 3,000 sheep and sent them to Ubadi. Many netizens were moved, and they all expressed that courtesy is light and affection is heavy. In this regard, I have seen the weak industry in Outer Mongolia. Have you ever heard of Mongolian animal husbandry products? Such as milk powder, packaged milk, meat products, wool products? Nothing. Because in essence, when agriculture and animal husbandry develop to a certain extent, it is an industry, and it is also a high-tech industry. What Mongolia lacks the most is industrial capacity. Why is New Zealand so rich without mining or industry? Because New Zealand's agriculture and animal husbandry are high-value added products, backed by the support of the entire Western industry. For example, New Zealand's kiwi fruit originated in China, but after being cultivated in New Zealand, it can be sold at a better price than Chinese kiwi fruit, because behind New Zealand's kiwi fruit is a long and advanced industrial chain, including breeding, cultivation, selection, packaging, shipping, marketing, branding. There are also many delicious kiwis in China, but we have not been able to cultivate a brand like Zespri. In the world, there are very few people who know that kiwis come from China, but almost all urban middle-class people know it. Zespri is the best kiwi. Also relying on agriculture and animal husbandry to establish a country, Mongolia's annual GDP is 15 billion US dollars, and the per capita is only 4,000 US dollars. The per capita GDP of New Zealand is 48,000 US dollars, which is 12 times that of Mongolia. A company in Inner Mongolia, Ely Group, will have a revenue of 110 billion, 16 billion US dollars, in 2022, exceeding the GDP of the entire Outer Mongolia. Behind the flower sea on the elevated road is an industrialized operation process. In Ningbo alone, the elevated road that needs to grow flowers is more than 50 kilometers long. Behind it is a complete set of one-stop industries of cultivation, logistics, construction, and maintenance, which is simply impossible for ordinary developing countries. Only with the ability of industrialization can the lowest cost and highest efficiency be used to achieve the best effect, otherwise any urban flower beautification project is unsustainable. Taking Hangzhou as an example, the elevated rose has been planted for 14 years. How is such an amazing rose maintained every year? Will there be high costs? In fact, it is not what everyone thinks. According to the information provided by the nursery of Hangzhou Road and Bridge Group, planting roses not only does not cost money, but also saves money. If it is planting seasonal flowers, the flowering season is less, the flowering period is short, and it needs to be changed 6 or 7 times a year. As for rose flowers, as long as they are properly maintained, they can bloom every month and grow every year. Today, after mechanization and large-scale upgrades, the maintenance quota for Hangzhou rose per square meter is only 10 yuan. Organizational skills. So here comes the question. Developed countries like Europe and the United States not only have money, but also have industrial capabilities. Why are there no flowers on the elevated roads in Europe, America, and Japan, and there are few street trees on both sides of the road? Anyone who has ever driven in a foreign country should know that outside of China, there are almost no hard indicators for road greening. Are there boulevards in European and American countries? Of course, France has the Champs-Élysées. To be honest, compared with the street trees in Ningbo, the maintenance level is very average, and the United States also has many beautiful boulevards. In private communities in Europe and the United States, or in key areas, the greening is very beautiful. Not only are there no rigid greening standards for urban roads, but there are also no street trees on expressways, or even isolation belts. As for the reason, it is because of the lack of sufficient organizational ability. From a technical point of view, the management level of Chinese cities is already world-class. This level is very disproportionate to China's per capita GDP of more than 10,000 US dollars. In other words, it is to use the economic capabilities of developing countries to surpass the management level of developed countries. Behind this level of management lies a unique organizational capability. In my opinion, China has made a mistake. On the one hand, it has inherited the organizational capabilities of the planned economy, and on the other hand, it has combined the efficiency and innovation of the market economy. I like to study some commonplace things in daily life. A few days ago, I got up early and rode a bicycle in Ningbo Yinzhou Higher Education Park. The total mileage was about 10 kilometers. There were at least 2 rows of road trees along the road, and there were many, 6 rows, and 4 rows were also very common. It is conservatively estimated that there are at least 3 rows of roadside trees on average for each section of road, 1 tree every 5 meters, and at least 6,000 trees for 10 kilometers. According to my observation, only 4 trees have problems. Among them, 1 tree has been necrotic and its leaves have withered. 2 trees have been removed, leaving tree pits awaiting replanting. There is also a tree that has just been replanted, and the trunk is still tied with straw ropes, and drips are still hanging on the branches. In professional terms, this is called infusion to promote activation technology. I can also be considered a well-informed person. I have traveled to 40 countries, and I have only seen this practice in China. I remember that more than 20 years ago, the survival rate of street trees in China was very low, and the relevant units only planted them but did not raise them. At that time, the economy was underdeveloped, and there were many idlers, and many of them liked to vandalize public property because their hands were itchy. In the past 10 or 20 years, the maintenance level of street trees in various parts of China has made a breakthrough. Our usual road greening is managed by a very efficient organization. Once the trees are necrotic, not only must they be replaced and replanted, but also carefully maintained to ensure the survival rate of the trees. Ningbo Swifu Road. Swifu Road in Yinzhou district is a very inconspicuous road. There are 2 rows of trees on the road. Visually, there is a tree every less than 5 meters. It is well maintained and has little traffic. There are only 2 lanes. The road is not wide and the trees are tall. Under the attack of street trees, Swifu Road has almost formed a tree hole. In summer, the perceived temperature on Swifu Road is 3 to 5 degrees Celsius lower than that of the nearby open roads. This is a road in Yinzhou district, Ningbo, with 4 lanes. On each side of the road, there are 3 rows of road trees, a total of 6 rows. They are all camphor trees, exuding a faint fragrance. In the urban area of Ningbo, how many such road greenings are there? I don't have statistics, and I can't find the data, but according to my living experience in Ningbo for more than 20 years, roads with more than 4 rows of street trees account for about 30%-40%, and 2 rows of street trees are standard. Always form 2 green walls. If you are interested, you can check Baidu's panoramic map. Taiping South Road in Taikang, Jiangsu. One year, I went to Taikang, Jiangsu, and took a random photo on the local Taiping South Road. It looks plain, but there are actually many details worth seeing. The green belt on the roadside not only has trees, shrubs, but also herbs and flowers. All kinds of plants are scattered high and low, and the shrubs are very flat. I deliberately went to see the real scene on Baidu Maps. In this same place, the herbs and flowers change regularly according to the seasons. Invariably, the shrubs were trimmed very level. In Jiangsu and Zhejiang areas, this kind of greening standard is so common that many people turn a blind eye to it. I checked the data of Taikang. I don't know if I don't check it. Taikang is a typical small city in Jiangsu, with a population of about 510,000. It is not well known, but its economy is developed. In 2020, its GDP will reach 138.6 billion yuan, and its per capita GDP will reach 270,000, equivalent to $42,000, surpassing Taiwan, South Korea, and Japan. It is not surprising that such a wealthy place has such exquisite urban management. West suburbs of Shanghai. This is a road in the suburbs of Shanghai, with rice fields and orchards on both sides of the road. At that time, I drove from Ningbo to Nantong and passed through the western suburbs of Shanghai. For the first time, I realized that there is still a large area of farmland in Shanghai, a place where every inch of land is expensive. Guangzhou Yuexiu Old Town. This is a road in the old city of Yuexiu, Guangzhou. At that time, I went to the nearby Dian du Ditong for morning tea. There were towering trees on both sides. In summer, walking under the trees felt much cooler. Although the old town is relatively narrow and the roadsides are full of cars, it is full of smoke and fire, and life is convenient. Hainan Coconut Grove Avenue. This is an unknown road in the west of Hainan, with a total of 4 rows of coconut trees planted. Many people have been to Hainan, but not many people have been to Ledongli Autonomous County in the west of Hainan. The populations of Ledong County in Hainan and Taicang City in Jiangsu are similar. Taicang is 510,000 and Ledong is 480,000. However, the scale of the economy varies greatly. The GDP of Ledong County is only 15.1 billion, which is equivalent to 11% of Taicang. Although the local street trees are not as neat and tidy as in southern Jiangsu, there are street trees on both sides of the main road. I drove around the island of Hainan by myself. The level of road construction in Hainan is very high, and the expressways extend in all directions. Except for expressways, Hainan's provincial and rural roads are almost all brand new. It can be seen that they are the results of construction in recent years. The central government's transfer payment has invested heavily in underdeveloped areas. At the beginning of 2023, I went to Hainan Island again. This trip was mainly concentrated in Kayangai in the east. No matter the expressway, provincial road, county road, or urban street, there are street trees on both sides of the road. Many places have formed a tree hole. Compared with Jiangsu, Zhejiang, and Shanghai, the maintenance of trees is not so delicate, but Hainan has plenty of light and heat, and the trees are easy to grow. As long as there is no human damage, a single tree can grow into a forest. Regarding the examples of street trees across the country, I will stop here first. All in all, according to my experience, street trees are standard equipment on major roads throughout China. You can hardly find a bare road without greenery in Chinese cities. These scenes, in the eyes of many people, are too ordinary. But behind this ordinary, there is a very extraordinary organizational ability. This is a kind of uncompromising organizational ability that works in unison across the country, from cities to villages. Looking at the whole world, probably only China has it. Right at the end. At the beginning of this article, I said that the inspiration for this article came from an American friend who has lived in China for a long time. Compared with his own experience in the United States, he can often see things that we are blind to. For example, he believes that compared with China's organizational capabilities, almost all other countries can be described as bulk. The most obvious example is the management capacity of Chinese cities. The Soviet Union, the last rival of the United States, also had terrible organizational capabilities, but the Soviet Union did not have China's industrial strength and lacked innovation capabilities. During the Cold War era, the United States did not worry about the penetration of the Soviet Union at all, because the economy of the Soviet Union was not worth mentioning in front of the West at that time. Today's young Americans are using TikTok, playing Chinese mobile games, and using DJI drones to buy Chinese goods from Temu and China. Almost in the blink of an eye, China has changed from a supplier of cheap goods to become a giant that infiltrates American society in all directions. The ghosts of XXX are wandering over the United States. In the eyes of this China hand, those American politicians seem to have failed to see the essence of China. In his opinion, the organizational capabilities of the Eastern powers are the most terrifying. The competition in modern warfare is logistics, which requires the explosive power of industrial production capacity, that is, an extreme organizational ability. He said that the United States has neither industrial production capacity nor explosive power. American politicians have angered China without knowing what to do. In his own words, "We are creating what we fear. We are creating what we fear." In fact, a few think tanks in the United States have also seen this issue, such as Elbridge Colby, who is a representative hawk in the United States. Some time ago, he tweeted, "The US Navy can't keep up with the PLA in shipbuilding, their shipyards have more capacity, one shipyard has more capacity than all our shipyards combined, this is a true threat." Twitter boss Musk, follow up below, it is of great strategic significance. But a small number of experts in the United States only see the problem itself, and it is extremely difficult to improve the organizational capabilities of the United States to the level of China. My American friend said earnestly that if China uses this organizational capability to improve the environment and improve people's living standards, it will be a blessing to the whole world. The implication is that if such organizational capabilities are used to produce weapons, it will be a disaster for the West. He believes that the best choice for China is not to be as knowledgeable as the United States. With China's current capabilities, as long as it concentrates on its own affairs, no country in the world has the ability to become China's enemy. Before I knew it, I wrote more than 7,000 words. Looking back now, I still feel unreal. Am I exaggerating? Or is it true that China's environmental quality has gradually caught up with the level of developed countries? The fans of this official account come from all over the world. You are welcome to leave a message. I will definitely release all of them for everyone to judge.